you have to be the leader, but everybody has to buy into your vision. So it's not always necessarily your vision, but it could be the group's vision.
Welcome to the Dream Home Podcast, the show where real estate meets real talk. Hosted by John Nagle, a seasoned expert with over $7 billion in real estate financing experience. This podcast features top realtors, builders, and financial pros. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you make smarter moves. Here's your host, John Nagle.
Welcome back to the Dream Home Podcast, where we bring you insider conversations with the people shaping real estate, mortgage, and home ownership today. I'm your host, John Nagle, mortgage loan originator with CMG Home Loans, and today's episode is one I've been looking forward to because we're joined by a true icon in the real estate world. My guest is Ron Wexler, president and co-owner of the Wexler Group at Keller Williams Preferred Realty in Chicagoland. Ron started in real estate in 1984 and has since helped close more than 3,500 homes. He started the very first Keller Williams office in the south and southwest suburbs of Chicago, where they never had one before, played a key role in expanding Keller Williams nationally, and has built one of the most successful teams in the Midwest. On top of that, Ron has coached and trained agents across the country with the Mike Ferry organization, Gary Keller, and KW Maps coaching, having impacted thousands of real estate professionals. Keller Williams Fast Track is a category of the coaching program that Ron helped create and taught, which included one of the Fast Track programs called The Language of Sales. He has also helped write the original version of Bold, which has been taken by over 75,000 agents. Today, we're diving into how Ron built such a lasting career, the systems that power his team's success, and the lessons he shares with agents and clients alike. So grab your notebook. This one's packed with value. Ron, thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us today.
How you doing?
Good.
Glad to be here.
Good. So let's start back at the beginning. You got into real estate in 1984 when the interest rates were sky high, 18% in some cases. What inspired you to take the leap into this industry during such a tough time?
I think, honestly, it was probably ignorance. You don't know what you don't know. And I grew up working in a stereo store, which, most people don't even know what that is anymore. But I grew up working in a stereo store from when I was 14 until I was 23. And I met this amazing woman, and she had 2 kids. And I thought, I can't make enough money to still have all my toys selling stereos. So I need to sell something bigger. And so I thought, well, maybe stocks and bonds. It's like, well, I didn't finish college, maybe cars. Well, nobody likes car salesmen. And I thought, well, that guy that sold my parents' house was pretty cool. I'll call him. And literally just called him up and said, hey, I'm thinking about real estate. And he's like, I think you'd love it. And that was really it. I mean, it was like that simple. And he actually owned the RE/MAX office that I worked at for 20 years. So he ended up being my broker, for a long time, and, a pretty good friend and all over the years. And so, yeah, it was kind of interesting, though, that I really, that literally at 24 years old, that was the entire train of thought that went into picking a career I've had for 40 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
What an unbelievable story. Just a series of events that led to that one choice that turned out to be such an incredible choice. And at the time, I know RE/MAX was one of the kind of the leaders in that category of, really good organizations. If you're a broker, to be able to earn, salesperson able to earn good percentages and so on. So yeah, you picked a great company to start with. That's for sure.
Well, it was interesting. He told me I couldn't work for him at the beginning because at that time, RE/MAX, you had to already be doing a certain amount of business because you got to bill every month, whether you sold any houses or not.
Right.
It was a true 100%. It really isn't anymore, but it was at that time. So he sent me to a Century 21 and said, when you get to about 2.5 million in sales, then come here. So I spent 18 months at a Century 21, and then I switched over.
Wow.
And at that time, I think my average price at that time was like $65,000 too. So just to put things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a median price in that day on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's incredible. So then Century 21, another early, frontier franchise company. So you had a good background getting started, and the fact that you had to make that $2.5 million to get in, right, was a good incentive, right, to get that first year in.
It was interesting because Century 21 was definitely known for training, kind of the way Keller Williams is now. And so that was the best place to go. And then I would just keep checking in with them. I'm like, okay, I'm at, I have this many listings. I'm at this, and he goes, okay, you can come now. So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
So how did your upbringing in Jeffrey Manor and later Homewood shape your approach to serving people?
I mean, well, I grew up in the city on the south side. The neighborhood was Jeffrey Manor. And, I think I kind of just learned that, people, it was interesting, the neighborhood, because, it started out, actually, we were Jewish. It was heavily Jewish. And then it kind of switched over like a lot of neighborhoods do. And but we still lived there. Nobody cared, And the bottom line as a kid was I learned there's people from all backgrounds that are really nice, and there's people from all backgrounds that aren't so really nice. It didn't really matter what their background was. And I think that really helped me as when I went into sales later, that, people are just people. And, either the parents raised them right or they didn't, basically, is kind of at my, amateur conclusion. But I think that really helped in sales because, then when I worked in the stereo store, people would judge the people walking in the door, by the way they were dressed. And, like the other salespeople wouldn't go wait on some guy because he was wearing, ripped blue jeans and a dirty jacket. And it's like that guy, owned a machine shop, and that's why he had a dirty jacket on. He could buy whatever stereo he wanted. And so I learned to just, get to know people and really, don't judge them based on looks or anything else, or even what anyone else says, but get to know people for yourself and make your own decisions if you want them in your life or not.
Yeah, that's so true. So early on, what did you discover about building relationships that still drives your business today?
Well, I'll tell you what was interesting. The transition from the stereo business to real estate, the stereo business, I was a salesman. I mean, I was really a salesman. Like this is going to sound terrible, but if you walked in with Consumer Reports and the number one was a Sony and the number three was a Sansui, and the Sansui had a bigger commission on it, I guess which one you went home with, right? And so I really sold. And when I went into real estate, I kind of did the same thing. The guy who trained me said, look, you show them 3 houses and sell them one. And literally the first 3 or 4 houses I sold, the people backed out. Like they would call and go, I don't even really like that house, And I was like, oh, it's not, I guess you don't sell people what you want them to buy. And it changed. Like, I really didn't know. I was pretty young, and I'd only sold one thing. So it from that moment on, I realized like our job is to help them figure out what they want and then go find it for them. It's it's not pure sales in what at least what I learned sales was. It's strictly getting to know people. That's why, our buyer team has a very strong buyer consultation that they do before they, we don't want to go show houses until we know the people and we know a lot about them. I learned to ask questions like, tell me about a house where you felt really comfortable growing up. And almost always it was their grandparents' house. And then I'd say, tell me about that house. They'd be like, oh, it had a magnolia tree in the backyard. And grandma used to make us cookies and we'd sit under the magnolia tree. And I was like, now I'm not even looking for a house anymore. I just have to find a house with a magnolia tree in the backyard and they're going to buy it. Right. So I just learned, like, find out what really triggers them, what's really important to them, and go find that. And the fact that I could get them to buy probably anything was not good at all. It's like, it's helping people figure out what they want and then going and finding it for them. That's biggest lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were instrumental in opening the first Keller Williams office in Chicagoland in 2005. That was a bold move. Keller Williams wasn't the giant it is now. What convinced you to bring Keller Williams to the south and southwest suburbs of Chicago?
Yeah, so they were already in parts of Chicago, but nobody on the south side had the guts to open one, is the way I looked at it. Because it was great when I first met with them. They said, oh, we met with this, and they named a couple top agents and other company owners, and none of them did it. Like, they all chickened out because, and again, probably that was also just like, ignorance is bliss. I was like, this thing's going to rock. Keller Williams is amazing. like you help all these agents make all this money and you have profit share, you do this and you do that. So I was just really excited about it. And I didn't even know that maybe there was things I didn't know that would stop it from being a big success. I was in an incredible RE/MAX office where we averaged like 35 deals an agent, which is outrageous. Like the next closest office probably averaged 11 or something, right? And then from there it was 4 or 3 or something, So I worked in this incredible office with these, like just the top people in our industry. We're in this little small office, like 45 of us. We're just killing it. And I never really wanted to leave there, except I knew that for me to grow, there was other things I needed to do, and I couldn't do it in the constraints of the RE/MAX model. And so I looked around. I met with just about every franchise you can think of. I had a huge offer from Century 21, like they're doing now again. Mm-hmm. But I mean, 6 figures. They would just hand me a check. I had that from a couple different companies, all kinds of offers, but none of them really gave me what I thought I needed. And then I met Gary Keller and saw, a lot of my friends around the country joining Keller Williams. And I went to learn about it. And I was like, okay, I don't want someone to give me money. I don't care about the split. I don't care about any of that. I want you to grow me as a business person and a salesperson. And that, like, getting in Gary Keller's, world, that's what happened for me, because I never even dreamed of owning other businesses or, just building wealth the way that, when you get into his world, it's just gigantic. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. So that's what kind of made me want to go in that direction. And then, and I was doing as an agent at RE/MAX, I was making, over $500,000 a year or whatever. So it wasn't like it was about the money, really. I was doing like 25 million in sales or something, but I wanted to grow. And that, like, not realizing what it takes to convince other people. Like, I had the dream, I got it, but you have to go, convince 100 other people to buy into it. And it took a lot of time, because again, when I first started, when we first started the office, I was selling people on, this is why, you join it, you're going to be a millionaire. We're going to all be driving Ferraris. And then after a while, I was like, not everybody's a match for what I'm trying to build. I've got to find people who also want to have personal growth and then grow their business larger. And it's not just about the money at all. Like that again, to me, I always thought it was about the money. That I always led with that. And it's not really that. It's like, I see the way we've changed so many lives in the offices that we've had. And it's like, that's really what it's about. When you see somebody that the rest of their life was going to make $30,000 to $50,000, now they're making $200,000. And that, their kids go to any college they want to go to. They take the trips that they never dreamed of taking. They drive, when we first started, I used to tell my partners, I'll know we're successful when I pull up in the parking lots full of BMWs and Mercedes. Like that was, I was never a hardcore numbers person about profit and loss and all of that. I mean, I'm better at it now, but like, I wouldn't follow my multi-year trends. I would just be like, okay, I just need to sell more. And I fixed every problem with more sales. But when you own a real estate office, you fix every problem with helping more agents make more money and live a bigger life and helping them grow. And so, again, it's for me, it's funny. I always get everything wrong before I get it right. So it really took us 4 or 5 years when we first launched to get the office even heading in the right direction, to find the right people that would buy into the vision, that understood it, and that wanted to grow. And then I just got, I don't say lucky, but I think I got lucky because I knew better what I was doing. But I found great people that wanted to build a big office and change a lot of lives with me.
Yeah, well, it's got to be very rewarding because, like you say, that's life-changing, actions that you're taking to help those people completely change the direction of their lives going forward. So it's got to be super rewarding.
Well, we talk about generational wealth a lot, right? And literally realizing these are people who, at some point in their life, they were handing their kids, some little house maybe, and a broken down, rusty old car. Now they're going to hand their kids fully vested IRAs and profit share money and investment properties. And, like we have a few people that have gotten into syndications we have a wealth building class that we do once a month, so just different things to help people. And it's funny, I thought about this the other day. Now we're doing wealth building And 8 years ago, we were doing Dave Ramsey, like trying to just get him out of debt. Right? And that same group that we were just trying to teach not to spend more than they make, they did Dave Ramsey. They started to learn how to budget and handle money. Now we're like, okay, now we're going to teach you what to do with that money now that you have it. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, that is awesome. So what was it like building that first office from the ground up?
It was, like I said, it was funny. They would put me on stage at Keller Williams Mega Camp with the leadership to tell everything you shouldn't do. Yeah. So I'm going to tell 5,000 people everything I did wrong, and they're going to learn more from that. And so really, I really didn't understand. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't understand the model as well. I didn't really understand my mission as an operating partner or someone growing an office. And it really took some time just to understand and figure it out. Because I really had, I'd owned my team, which was really a sales team, and everything was the Ron show. It was all based on me being a good salesman. And I'd never really owned, even though it was a business, it really wasn't. It was just a good sales team. So when we opened the office, I had to actually learn about business. And I was like, it was a long road. But it's funny, it was never about the money. And it was never, even when it was miserable, it wasn't really, 2 years after we opened was 2008. Right. I mean, we opened right before the most miserable real estate market in the history of real estate. And it's funny, the area where we opened, of course, I even did that wrong. I opened it so I didn't have a stoplight between my house and the office. Instead of putting it where it belonged, I didn't put the office where it should have been. I just put it where it was most convenient for me and my team. And even that little thing, it took like 6 years before I realized I needed to just take this office and move it to this other market. So now it's 25 minutes, it's still not a big deal, but, in Chicago, 25 miles or 25 minutes is like a whole different world, from one area to the next. So the area where I started it is still good and viable. And I think we're still the top office there. But if there weren't enough agents and there wasn't enough business in that area to sustain a successful office.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting.
Right. So what lessons about leadership and culture did you learn during that launch and you still use at the Wexler Group today?
Let's see. I would say probably one of the top ones is that you have to be the leader, but everybody has to buy into your vision. So it's not always necessarily your vision, but it can be the group's vision. We read a lot of books together, and we're reading The Culture Code right now. I don't know if you've read that one, but we're, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. A lot of his books, a lot of John Maxwell. For me, the leadership journey started with reading John Maxwell books, and then getting around Gary Keller. Being in his world. I got really lucky. I have a couple incredible partners who were very good business people. And at the point where I finally shut up and let them talk and started learning from them, it made a huge difference for me. So I'd say that, the leadership journey, leadership is just basically, like Gary Keller, I love his definition. He said, it's teaching other people how to think so they can get what they want. And so that's what it was. It's, realizing that, again, it's not about me or what I want. It's about them getting what they want. And I love that our theory, our goal was to build an empire. And the way you build an empire is that you help a lot of other people build their kingdom. And then you put all your kingdoms together, you have an empire. And I just love that thought. So every agent here is building a kingdom. And some of them are building empires too. Well, we might have empires next door to each other or something, as it goes. But the bottom line is everybody should be the center or the king or queen of their empire or their kingdom. And then those kingdoms should all be in alignment and work together to build something gigantic that's bigger than all of us could have ever built on our own.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. So Keller Williams has always emphasized education and coaching. I've been working alongside Gary Keller influenced the way you approach team building.
Just that, I think that like learning to pay attention, knowing what you want and then finding people that want the same thing and want the same level of growth. And I'm not for 1 minute going to say I didn't have a couple bad partnership experiences because I have along the line, so getting better at picking great people that want to grow with you. That, my partner Tammy right now, she owns basically half of everything. Like we built 6 businesses, right? And without her, I'd have 1 or 2, and they'd probably be really bad. I think, she could live without me and I could live without her, but together we're an incredible team, and our families just support us. And so that's been, I think that's it. Finding, I had a partner, Doris Carlin down in Joplin, Missouri. Same thing, just incredible partner, just really powerful, really good at what she does. I had another woman up in north side of Chicago. We did an office up there named Lisa, and she was amazing. So it's finding people who really you can get in alignment with. It doesn't mean you agree on everything. There's plenty of times when I'll look at what we're doing and think this is not the way I would do it. And it doesn't really matter, because if you're in alignment, you'll power through. And if you're heading in the wrong, it's easier to change direction than it is to get started. Right. So if we're heading in the wrong direction, we can change that easier than starting from scratch and figuring out what to do.
Yes, absolutely. So you've also been on the coaching and training side, working with the Mike Ferry organization, Keller Williams Maps, and mentoring agents across the country. You've not only coached, but you've also created parts of the training curriculum that's still used today. Mike Ferry often says the fortune is in the follow-up. You've even been quoted at one of the retreats saying the most important tool in lead follow-up is a large trash can, because not every lead is real. Can you explain that philosophy?
Well, that was fun. So I was doing something with Mike, and I was on stage, and they were talking about lead follow-up, and I said, the most important tool I have is my garbage can. And he just froze for a second. He's like, oh my God. And I think he shared that at every retreat he's done for the last 25 years. But he just and later when we were more computerized, we said it's the F10 button, right? So when you have a lead, and I know every computer is not the same, but F10 was the delete button, right? And so it's knowing when you're done with that prospect and not beating a dead horse and not, chasing them forever. Of course, I think it was even more important when it was all done by hand, because I had to physically take out a piece of paper with someone's name and phone number and decide if I was going to call it, or their email address, or whatever it was. Now I can put them into a drip campaign for the rest of their life. And if I never hear from them, it doesn't really matter. But the truth is, if you're not following up on every lead until they tell you, this is when you should call me back, or don't ever call me again, then you're making a mistake. Because I think we tend to, especially as we have tools feeding us leads right now, which most of us have, all kinds of things sending us, people to call. And I think when you do that, you kind of cherry pick, and you kind of just look for I want to buy a house this week kind of people. And really, I think, especially with the internet lead generation, I think it's a nurturing game. And I think you've got to be as comfortable calling back the people that you talk to today, and they're not doing anything till this time next year. And you don't, those people you don't throw away, but you have a set campaign of how you're going to keep up with them and track them. And again, if they're like, listen, I have a real estate license and I'm going to sell myself a house, then I might talk to them about joining Keller Williams or something, but I'm not going to track them as a potential buyer or seller. So I think it's just knowing when to F10 or garbage can someone, and just be okay with that. And the only way you can really, and I think this is what led up to saying that to Mike, the only way you can get rid of leads and it could be someone you don't want to work with. They could be buying a house tomorrow, but you're not a good match for them personality wise, or just their behavior. So if you're not lead generating every day, you don't get to throw away the ones you don't want, because that's all you have. Right. And when you generate a lot of leads, you get to cherry pick the best ones and then figure out a way for that's like the A buyers that fit your criteria. And then the B and C buyers, how are you going to serve them? If it's not you, is it someone on your team? What I did a lot when I first started generating a lot of leads was anyone that didn't fit my base criteria, I had 3 other agents in the office and I did referrals with them. I would just say, here, this guy wants to buy, I think he's even buying this house, but it's on Saturday when I'm at my kid's Little League game. So I'm not going. He's yours. Give me a referral fee. It's all set up here. Here's the showing sheets. It's the appointment's already set. Go and do it. And I get a referral fee, and I didn't miss my kid's Little League game.
Yeah, I think that's terrific because you're satisfying the customer. You're also generating business for an associate, and at the same time you're keeping your life intact, so you have the balance as well, so you can go to the game, right? So
yeah, well, I think that's probably why Mike put me on stage the most, is because I was the guy who literally took it to heart when they said create a schedule and follow it. And my schedule had me at home at the dinner table at 5:00 every night, not even leaving the office at 5, but at home eating dinner. And then no weekends, pretty much all the time, for sure during the summer. I just worked basically 8 until 4:45 when I went home, and that was it. But when I worked. It was 2.5, 3 hours a day on the phone, talking, hunting, looking for buyers and sellers to work with, and then 2 or 3 appointments each day.
Yeah. So what were the biggest takeaways from your time as a Mike Ferry coach that agents should still practice daily?
Well, I would say every agent needs to write their schedule for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, write your schedule for next 12 months. Start with a calendar, put in every day you're taking off. So put in all your children's vacations, your family, your kids' birthdays, family vacations. I used to take the PTA calendar from the school because that had all the days the kids had off, and I would take off every day my kids had off. So even if it was some weirdo, Columbus Day or something where you would normally work, I would take that day off, and I would spend it with my kids. And it was actually really fun because I got to, the other parents knew that, who basically had to go to work on those days. So I would end up with a car full of kids, and we'd go play the perfect game, and I have, a lot of fun with a bunch of kids. So I became like the babysitter on those days. But so I put in all the days off. I put in the special times with my wife, all the holidays, like in December and January, when everybody is like, okay, well, I'm behind. So I'm going to take off Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day, and that's it. And we know that's baloney, that you're going to want more time off. So I would just give myself I think I'd work 6 days in December. I'd work, I dropped most of January I would work. So anyways, I would do my schedule first. And then I got all my family time taken care of. Usually there'd be about 170 days left after I did, the weekends off and all of that. There'd be about 170 days left. And then I'd write my schedule for those 170 days. So be in the office every day between 7:30 and 8:00. Well, I'd have a practice partner to practice scripts and dialogues. Usually either at 7:30 or at 8, and it would be 15 minutes to a half hour. And we just practice back and, I do the expired listing script. They do the for sale by owner script. I do, the seller pre-qual script. They do a buyer script, so we just go back and forth, back and forth. So we got really good at the dialogues. And that for me made a huge difference because you're so much more efficient when you're saying the right thing instead of winging it. And, certain language causes people to want to work with you and certain language repels them. So anyway, so I said, lead gen was the first thing in my business schedule. Education was the next thing. So I would go see Mike Ferry. I would go, at the time, at that time I was still with RE/MAX. So mostly I did Mike Ferry events. And then if there was some other speaker I was following that I wanted to go to his events, I would put the events in next. And then I would basically put in, lead follow-up time would be after lead gen time, a break just to catch my breath for 20 minutes, a half an hour. And then I'd have a 1:30, 2:30, and a 3:30 appointment slot. And if I didn't set any appointments for those slots, then I would either go home or go back and lead gen more. And I would do that based on where I was. So if my goal was to get 5 appointments a week and I only had 2 appointments and it was Wednesday, then I didn't go home if I didn't have appointments in the afternoon. If I was booked up and I had, 5 or 10 appointments that week, then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go home and I'll be home when the kids get home from school. This will be great. Yeah. So, but when you do that, here, the dilemma I always had was when I was at work, I felt guilty. I wasn't with my kids. And when I was with my kids, I felt guilty because I knew I wasn't doing my job when I was at work. And as soon as I got hardcore about my work schedule, it was like complete relief. Like I never felt guilty about work again. Once I knew when I was there, I was giving my 8 hours or 8.5 hours, 7 hours, whatever it was. I knew I gave everything I had to my business during that time. And I could go home and give everything I have to my kids when I got home. And it made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. We've talked about that before, where you're focusing during that time at work, and that allows you to be more efficient rather than kind of spreading it across, nights, weekends, evening, daytime, and you really aren't filling up that time and focusing on what you need to do. And I think a lot of listeners could benefit from that philosophy. So look, you're at work, let's get that in, and then let's cut our time away so we have time to spend with our families, because a lot of us aren't able to do that as efficiently. So I think that's a great philosophy that hopefully the listeners will listen to and learn from as well.
Well, in the stereo store, they lock the door at 9:00 and you left, right? But when you own your own business, you can get on the phone at 9:00 and still make phone calls. Or now you can text and email, and you can create marketing campaigns. You can do all kinds of stuff all night long. So I think it might be a little tougher to be hardcore about your schedule. Like I kind of got lucky when I first did this, was when there was no such thing. The car phone was a car phone. It was locked in your car. So when you turned off your car and went in the house, you were done. And then the phone number that was listed for me was forwarded to an answering machine at the office. Right. So nobody could reach me. And I think it's a little harder because people know you're choosing to ignore them now, right? I think it's a little tougher, but it's the same. It's really not that different. If you say, look, I'm done at 5:30, period. I'm not taking calls, making calls, checking emails. I'm especially I don't have little kids anymore. So it's not as really, I don't even mind, if I do something later in the day. But with kids, I was hardcore about it. I was like, they're going to get 100% of me when I'm home. And I just made that a priority.
Well, those are some very fortunate kids. I got to tell you that for you making that commitment to them. So with Keller Williams Maps, you help design and teach the fast track category of coaching, including the language of sales program. You also help write the original version of Bold, which has now been taken by over 75,000 agents. Can you share the story of how those programs came about?
Well, all right. So fast track coaching was Keller Williams. It was, basically programs where you'd pay and do a half hour or an hour call every week. So I didn't invent that, but I helped design. Originally, there was a class called, what do we even call it? Mega Agent something. Anyways, so when Diana Kokoska took over Maps, she, me and Doris kind of helped with a couple of the programs she wanted to do. Mega Listing Skills, that's what it was called.
Okay.
And so we just taught a really hardcore how to be a great listing agent class. And then after that, she asked us to do a class called Language of Sales. And I partnered with some people and did that class. And so those were basically, 16 weeks long, an hour a week for 16 weeks. And then with Mike Ferry and with Keller Williams, I was asked to do one-on-one coaching where you're coaching agents, for a half hour every week. And honestly, it wasn't I think they got something out of it and I think I did okay, but it's a different personality than mine that's really good at doing that kind of coaching. And so both times, I did it with Mike because it was exciting, and really Mike invented real estate coaching. There was no such thing before he started that whole industry. And so just being a part of it and getting to be one of his coaches was awesome. And then after I did it for about a year and a half, I realized that I wasn't as productive at it as I wanted to be. And even though it was really, the pay was really good, but it just, again, if I don't feel like I'm really making a difference or contributing, the money doesn't matter. And so I went to Mike and I was like, listen, I'll still be a coaching client, but I don't want to coach anymore. And, he was fine with it. And, we're still pretty good friends to this day. But then with Maps, I did the same thing. Diana needed more coaches when she took over Maps. So I said, I'll take on some clients. And then as soon as they got to where they didn't really need me anymore, I was like, okay, I don't want one coach anymore. So it takes somebody with a better memory. And, you and I can have a great conversation. And then if I talk to you 6 months from now, it'll be like we just met for the first time again. My memory is terrible. So even with taking great notes and everything, I just felt like I wasn't as effective as there's, they still do have some great one-on-one coaches. And in fact, a few of our agents here are with coaches that I've known, for 25 years, and I'm watching their production just skyrocket. I really think everyone should have a coach for anything they want to be good at. And it's not just real estate. I mean, it's just anything that you want to be good at. Find somebody better than you. And that's kind of what I've done with my whole career. I found the guy that got me started at RE/MAX. Then I found Mike Ferry. Then I found Gary Keller. Just find people who, when I switched to Keller Williams, my best year ever at RE/MAX was like 25 million. And we got, like, again, partnering with Tammy, which I learned from Gary how to partner. We got to over 50 million in sales, and it's like 25 million is already a big deal, to double that and to do it on the south side of Chicago where your average price is 230,000. I don't think it's as hard to do it in Beverly Hills when your average price is $1 million. Right. So, it's pretty interesting how that works.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice about the coaching. So how do these training systems, Fast Track, Language of Sales, Bold, set up agents for success even decades later?
So a big part of it is, it's like Mike Ferry used to talk about repetitious boredom a lot, right? You do something over and over and over. Michael Jordan stood at the free throw line and shot 1,000 times, right? And, what was it? The guy was a shortstop for Boston. What was his? Cal Ripken. Cal, if you ever saw his workout where the machine threw him a ball, like 1,000 times, and he had 2 pieces of black tape on the wall in an X where the first baseman's glove would be, and he just took a grounder, hit the X, pick a grounder, and he did that thousands of times. And so I think coaching's the same way, that when you do a fast track kind of program where you pick a subject, pick whatever subject you want to master, and then you come back and you work on it every single week, and you work on it a little bit every day, and then you report back to a coach with some accountability once a week. I think that's what's great about the fast track programs, that they just pick one subject. You want to be a great buyer's agent, then focus on the buyer consultation. You want to be a great listing agent, focus on, getting listing appointments, and then how to actually list the house, saying the right things at that appointment. You want to be good at sales overall, do a language of sales type of class or NLP class, So I think so for me, that I like that, like anything that I want to master. Like right now, there's some good ones. I haven't done one yet, but I'm going to for AI. Obviously, it's taking over our entire world. So there's a bunch of classes where you do 15 minutes a day learning about AI. And I think that's really, like I said, I haven't committed yet, but I think that's probably the next thing that I'll work on.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely out there and it's being used a lot. I use it quite a bit myself. It's really amazing what it can do for you, and especially in the real estate world where, in the old days where you'd be trying to figure out what's the description of this neighborhood and this home and the benefits of being in this school system and so on. And now it's kind of at your fingertips, or that helps you to be a good writer if you're not that naturally. So I think AI is a big thing these days. So for new agents feeling overwhelmed, what's the one daily habit that will move the needle the most?
What I like to teach new agents is, first, make a list of every person on the planet Earth that knows you exist. So not just your family and friends, because most people are like, oh, I only know 62 people. Yeah, I only know 100 people. I'm like, everybody knows at least 300, probably 500, that you know well. I was like, so start with family and friends, then do neighbors, do anybody who you buy a product from. Where do you buy your gasoline? Where do you get your laundry done? Where, just every person on the planet Earth that would see your face and think they know you, or hopefully know you. So make that list first, and then figure out a number and talk to that number of people every day. The newer agents, I'll tell them, just have 10 conversations 5 days a week. And if you do that, you will start building a really strong foundation. So I'd say it's definitely lead generation, followed quickly by learning the scripts and dialogues for the buyer consultation and the listing presentation, right? So you want to be good at those. But I would rather the agents set some listing appointments right away with their sphere of influence and neighbors and everything. And even if they have no idea what they're doing, then turn to a top agent in the office and say, will you come with me? I mean, my first couple of listings, I didn't go by myself. I wasn't going to gamble that time, like a $2,500 paycheck, but I wasn't going to gamble a paycheck on the fact that I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I would just bring someone with, and I'd be like, most of the time they wouldn't even ask for anything. They would just come with and help. Even if you had to split it with them, what's the difference? I mean, so until you nail the listing presentation, I would say don't go by yourself unless if you, like I could sell, so I probably could have got away with it. But the truth is you really don't want to get away with it. You want to do a good job for people. So learn what you need to learn to go on a listing presentation and do it the right way. And the same thing with pricing. Learn how to price. And I don't know, we encourage our agents, we have a productivity coach, and he helps them with their first few sales to make sure they understand how to put together a market study, how to do a market evaluation. Because if you price a home wrong, it's like, not that we don't all do it sometimes, no matter how good you are, but it's miserable. And
yeah, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the seller. It's not good for anyone.
No. So first skill though, I think is just making that list and committing to how many people you're going to talk to every single day.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So let's talk about your team. The Wexler Group helps hundreds of families a year across Chicago and its suburbs. What systems and processes allow you to serve at such a high level of consistency?
Well, at the beginning, it was just working when Tammy and I partnered like 10 years ago. And before that, I was closing, 100 to 150 deals a year. And it was all on the strength of me making calls for 2 to 4 hours a day. When she came in, the goal was to get me out of that level of production, but to have our production keep increasing. And so what we had to do, like for my lead gen, we had to replace me with like basically 3 people, on the phone making calls all day long because I had so much experience. I'm not saying like I was so great at it. It's just I'd done it for so freaking long, So we had to train new people to make calls. So we usually have at least 1, if not 2 people on the phone, 3 to 4 hours a day making calls. We have used just about every system you can think of as far as CRMs. I don't know if you want me to name names, but I could share.
Sure.
All right. So, right now we're heavy in Keller Williams Command, but we've used Local, we've used Brivity, Top Producer, of course, way back in the old days. Follow-Up Boss we're pretty happy with that. Boomtown, of course, for expireds and for sale by owners, Vulcan 7 is amazing. So if people are looking for a program that, you just wake up every day, turn it on, and it gives you all the names, phone numbers, and a lot of email addresses for all the expireds in your area. So that's a really great program if people are looking for something like that. So we've used a lot of software, but it's interesting. So this year, because Tammy and I got focused on a couple other things, our teams, like we probably won't even end up with like 90 sales this year. Like we'll end up be one of our worst years ever. And it's totally our fault. Like we let a few people go and we didn't replace them. And we've been playing with our back end systems a lot. So this year, I'm looking at where our sales are coming from, and it's pretty interesting because probably 70% is my original sphere of influence in my past client database.
Wow.
Right. So now I know that if we never make another outbound phone call, we could do 60 or 70 transactions a year the rest of our lives. But when we want to get back to 150 to 200, we've got to go out and generate the rest of those deals.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So you've averaged 15 times the number of sales compared to the national agent average. How do you keep that level of production year after year?
Well, I think mostly it's been finding other people that want to play at a high level. So when it was just me and like I had me and 1 buyer's agent for a long time and then 2 admin, it was just purely, what Gary Keller says, energy and enthusiasm, right? Like that was it. It was very entrepreneurial. And then when we got systematized, like we automatically will do, 5 to 8 deals a month with no effort at all, just because we have all these systems in place. So we have using Command, we have regular emails going out. We're triggered, when we're supposed to call people. My only real lead generation job now is after every closing, I just call the client and thank them for their business. I call the other agent and thank them for working with us. And that's really it. And then a lot of times I'm customer service department because then I'll see if there's anything they weren't happy about that we can fix or any, services they might need. And then those people go into a regular where they get a call. I would say, like, if you want to keep it basic, every client that you ever work with or anybody you work with, they should hear from you a minimum of 4 times a year. So I used to, when it was just me, I would rotate through my database every 90 days. And then they would get something in the mail from me once a month. And then eventually it turned to twice a month. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book.
Absolutely. I got a copy sitting on my shelf over there.
Well, I mean, that is the Bible. And in that book, they say at 33, anybody you work with that you have a relationship with, they should hear from you in some fashion 33 times a year. So figure out, for us, it was 4 phone calls and 24 pieces of mail. And then we threw in like 10 emails. So, but make sure that people, it's funny, we're always afraid we're calling too much or reaching out too much. Tell me anyone who sees this podcast isn't hearing from Amazon pretty much every day, right? They're doing a 365 touch, and we're afraid to talk to people 5 times a year. So it's about being there when they're ready. And if you really care about people, I mean, the call isn't, a lot of times when I'm calling, if I'm talking to a past client, I'm not calling saying, when do you want to sell your house? We're like, hey, how you doing? How's the kids? Are they in high school still? You just get to know people and follow up. I just had an interesting call this week. A guy called me who's been in our database. He literally, I think, was maybe the 5th sale I ever made in the 80s. Like, that's how long ago this guy was our client. And somehow he's still in our database. I have no idea how, because we've been through so many. But he just called me. He goes, you just sent me an email, and I just wanted to check in with you. We haven't talked in 40 years. So, and he had moved to Florida, so he wasn't like a high priority for me. But obviously we bumped into him enough times over that 40 years with mail or email, or maybe someone on the team leaving him a voicemail. He still felt compelled to call and ask me a real estate question. So are you that person? Are you people's go-to for all things real estate?
Yeah, I think that it amazes me that I kind of have that same experience often, where you haven't talked to someone or been in touch for a long period of time, but you're reaching out periodically, whether it's a text or an email or a phone call, voicemail, and you just happen to hit that right day when they're thinking about that subject, and now your name is in front of them. Yeah. And just it almost seems like out of the blue, like, how in the world did this guy think of me, right? To reconnect at this time. So it is very important to stay out there in front of people. And I think people actually appreciate it that you're staying in touch with them, and that they know they have that go-to person when they need it, whether it's for them or someone else.
Well, then they know it wasn't transactional.
Yes.
Right? They know that the relationship wasn't, I love you, you're the most important person in my life until the day we close, then I never call you again ever. Right? That's transactional.
Yes.
But if you're still checking in on them 6 months later or a year later, like I said, I don't know if you ever heard of Tim Wood, but he's passed, but he's in the Red Book a lot. He's one of the greatest coaches I ever had. And Tim told me, basically, when he started coaching me, I told him how my business worked, and he told me I was an idiot. And he said, you're calling strangers all day, and the people who love you and want to give you business, you're not calling them at all. So he made me call, at the time, there was 1,300 in my database, and he made me call every single person. And we just did a real simple script. I was calling to apologize. And people would be like, why is he apologizing? And, they say, what's wrong, Ron? I was like, well, our relationship's my responsibility, and I haven't done a good job keeping up with you. And I was just calling to see how you guys are doing. And then, that's how I restarted all those relationships. I'd say, if you knew anybody buying or selling a home right now, would you feel comfortable sending them my way? And I went from 1,300 to 900. And not because I think 2 people said, no, we wouldn't ever use you again. Everything else was, they were gone. They just got their real estate license. They whatever, for whatever reason, they didn't need to be in my database. And then I called that 900 people every 90 days for 6 years, until when Tammy made me stop making calls and turned it over to our team. But that was good for 60 to 70 deals a year from that 900.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So based on your experience with Mike Ferry, Keller Williams, and your own success, what's the single biggest mistake you see agents making right now in 2025?
I think they literally need to turn off all the computers and everything and call some human beings. Honestly, I think it's that simple. I think everyone's wanting the computer and AI and marketing, and I don't know. I think call some people, just get on the phone with humans, go walk the mall and talk to every person at the mall. I don't care what you do, but go people like you. They meet you and they like you and they want to work with you. And I see the new agents right away that setting up this and setting up that. I'm like, go get your first deal under your belt right now. Go knock on some doors until someone says yes. Hold some open house until someone says yes, and get that first sale going. Because I see, the biggest mistake I think people make in real estate is they quit. Like I always felt like through all the trials and tribulations, sometimes I thought maybe I'm just too dumb that I didn't know I should have quit. Like my first year, I made like $6,000 or something like that. And I was, in the stereo store, I was working 16 hours a week and making over $20,000 a year, just part-time selling stereos. And I went into real estate and I was losing my butt. I was dying and living. Luckily, I had some savings. I was living off of that. But I just didn't quit. And I think a lot of people in real estate, they try it. And, when I met Mike Ferry, it was 1993. And the first time I saw him, he said, he looked at this room full of pretty successful agents. And he said, almost all of you have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. He goes, until you commit fully that this is your career for the rest of your life, you're probably not going to succeed at a high level. And that really, that was a ton of bricks for me. That really hit me because it was true. I was like, I can always go back to the stereo store. Now I can make 50 or 60,000 a year if I go full time, which still was a lot of money then, But as soon as he said that, I was like, he's right. I'm giving it a lot of effort, but I'm also like, man, if something better came along, I'd be out of here. And from that moment on, that's when everything got amazing when I made that commitment. So it's okay to quit and it's okay to commit. It's not okay to float in between. So if you get into real estate, you realize it's not for you. It's okay to stop. Go find something. Like I get up every day. I'm not thinking about making money. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm kind of beyond the point where I'm worried about paying my bills. I'm doing it because I really love it and I enjoy it and it's fun and I'm not attached to the outcome. I come here and I do the best I can every day, see how many people I can play with and help. And that's it. It's not, if it's not fun, it's interesting. We just celebrated my mom's 91st birthday.
Oh, congratulations.
And she teaches preschool 5 days a week still to this day. And it's always been, she loves, in our neighborhood, she's everybody's grandma because she's on her third generation. She's been teaching since the 70s, and it's really I realize that for her, it's never been about the money because they always try to make her the principal of the school or some kind of they keep trying to bump her up. And she's like, nope, I want to be in that class with the kids. That's where that's where I love to be. And I think real estate for me is kind of that same thing. I really like what we accomplish when we're helping other people grow in real estate. And if you don't have that level of passion, then find something where you do. You should have a thing where you could be 91 years old and still want to do it every day and not because of money. So find that thing for you, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I love the story about your mom and how lucky are those kids, right? That they, the third generation gets to learn the same things that they did several generations ago. So you built an incredible career and coached so many others along the way. What drives you today after 40 years in real estate?
I think there's a small select group of us, about 5% of the world, who are never satisfied no matter what. And I think I'm part of that 5%. So I think I always want more and bigger and better. I want what I do to touch more people. I want to make a difference for more people. So I think that's about it. I mean, I'm 64 and I'm watching all of my friends retire right now, right? They're all right there. And I'm like, I can't even imagine, it doesn't even compute for me at all. And I mean, I go play every weekend, we have a little cottage on a lake. We go play all summer long up in Michigan and things like that. I can't even imagine that I wouldn't go somewhere every day and be productive. Now, does it have to be real estate? No, but it would be somewhere like just backing off completely and, just traveling or whatever. Like to a lot of, and I'm saying like, I know that makes me weird. Like it really makes me a small part of the people on the planet that think that way. But I love showing up here every day and contributing however I can to whoever's here that needs it or that wants it. So
looking back, what's been the most rewarding part of your journey? Building Keller Williams in Chicago, coaching, or serving clients directly?
Booze. I think each of those things was the best thing at its moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved when it was just me cranking it out every day, lead generating all day long and doing that. I used to do double prospecting. I had two phones in front of me and I had a headset plugged into each phone. I dialed two phones at the same time and do, prospecting calls. And so at that moment, that was amazing. And then when I got to coach people and someone would call and say, literally what you said, like Mike had you on stage and you talked about your schedule and putting your children first. And I went home and talked to my wife and she told me she was just about to leave me because I was such a bad husband and father. And I thought that, so like that, the satisfaction, the joy you get from that is amazing. And then now I want to build businesses. Really, that's, with Tammy and a couple of the other people we partner with, I think it's just building more bigger businesses that create more opportunities for more people to have their kingdoms. And so I think that's the main thing. Like we just had this class about investing, and I'm sitting in that room and I'm looking, and a couple of those people are like, I just bought my first investment property. I just bought my third investment property. I just sold one and I have to do a 1031 exchange. 5 years ago, none of these people were having those conversations. So the people around you grow to the extent that you do. So I feel like almost like if I stop growing and striving for more, I'm stunting everybody's growth. So it's kind of interesting, but I think we all grow together or we all stop growing together.
Yeah, I think that's great. So outside of real estate, I know you're a big sports fan and athlete yourself, softball, racquetball, volleyball, and even water skiing. How do those passions fuel the energy you bring to business?
Well, I think the lessons from the sports are awesome because it's all the same. Like playing baseball is the same as selling real estate. There's so many parallels in discipline. And, I always talk about, I realized with softball that I wasn't hitting the ball as far as I used to. As you get older, you're not necessarily strong. And so I started studying that. And it was because of what I learned in business that made me think, wait, I bet you there's a way. And I was like, okay, I went and found out that I've been using the wrong grip on the bat my whole life. So then I took a bat, put it in my bedroom, and every morning I woke up and grabbed the bat the right way, lined up my knuckles the right way, and I swung 50 times every day for like a year. Oh. And all of a sudden, like I hit my first over the fence home run since I was 12 years old last year. I get a lot of hits, but I never hit home runs. It just was never my thing. And I hit this ball and it went over the fence. I thought, wait, I haven't hit a ball over. I've been playing, that's a softball. I've been playing this softball for 25 years and I've had 1 million home runs, but they were always like in the park home runs. And it's like, I hit a ball over a fence. That's insane. And just thinking about like, so you're never done. Like you can keep growing and improving even as you age. But it's only if you are, you're dedicated to it. Like I was committed to that grip and swinging the bat learning to swing it. I literally read, I think it was like Roberto Clemente's book on how to bat or something, I forgot whose book it was. But like, I was like, oh, I don't have to be satisfied with going downhill at this point. I can probably improve. So with the sports, it's just like, I don't know if you ever water ski, but I love like slalom skiing. I just love that feeling. And to me, that's the payoff for the work that I do when I get to water ski. It's just a gift, it's just, people like to skydive or something. To me, it's kind of that feeling when you're gliding across the water and jumping the wake or whatever. It's just a really great feeling. So the sports just kind of, it all plays together and it's all trying to get better and better at it. Even, I think like with softball, I literally think I'm compared to my peers, I'm better than in Little League, I was never one of the best kids. Like I was always the kid that played right field for 2 innings, but I still loved playing. So it didn't really matter. And, now I'm one of the better players. So it's like, you can just keep improving. there's no reason really to stop or back off or quit if you're enjoying it.
That's a great story about the grip on the bat, because it just goes to tell you that, if you focus on something just like you did with your scripts for expires and your scripts for FSBOs, that you become better at it. And to have that change from that period of life over all those years, just because all of a sudden you focused, hey, how do I figure this out? And you found the resource and you practiced and you made it better. So I love that story.
When I got hardcore with the scripts, and again, that was definitely Mike Ferry, beating on us and pushing us. What was interesting is one year I made 12,000 contacts, and that was when I was double dialing, I was doing 4 to 5 hours a day, but I did 12,000 actual human beings on the other end, not dials, but contacts. And we closed 121 deals. And because of how good you get when you do the repetitious boredom, the next year I made 4,500 contacts and I closed 132. So because I got so good, and I used to tell Diana when we were working on coaching stuff that I could literally tell by the way they were breathing when I would say, "Hi, it's Ron Wexler calling from Keller Williams." And just by when you heard, "Oh," I already knew, so I could match them. But if you didn't make that 12,000 calls, you would never get so good at it that you could, mirror and match just by the way they breathe before they even said a word. And so I think that get really good at it, just pick something. And I don't care if it's open houses, door knocking, farming, pick a neighborhood and become the king of that neighborhood or the queen of that neighborhood. Just pick one thing and just be so good at it that people want to put you on stage and have you share it with others.
Yes. I love that. So, Ron, this has been incredible. Your story really highlights what's possible when you combine systems, coaching, and heart for the people you serve. For our listeners, if you want to learn more about Ron and the Wexler Group, you can visit thewexlergroup.com or follow Ron on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And there will be more information for Ron's contact in our show notes below. And as always, if you're looking to start a home ownership journey, my team at CMG Home Loans is here to help and get you pre-approved and make your dream home a reality. Ron, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, it was fun. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Dream Home Podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit from Ron's wisdom. And Ron, thanks so much. We really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thanks a lot. It was great.
Thanks for listening to the Dream Home Podcast, hosted by John Nagle. Ready to take the next step towards your dream home? Visit www.dreamhomepodcast.com for resources, tips, and expert advice. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time for more real estate insights and mortgage tips. Until then, happy home hunting.